So tomorrow is brew day. Today is brew day eve. And right now we're just gonna get ready to do a yeast starter. We're gonna be using this flagship yeast, imperial yeast, but our batch is gonna be pretty big, so we're gonna use this can.
It looks like a soda can.
It looks like a soda can. It looks kind of like a beer can, but it's not. It's a proper starter can.
I don't like beer.
It's yeast starter solution, so I don't have to make my own DME. So what we'll do, we'll use that. We'll prepare it and we'll put it in here. And then we're gonna use this stir plate.
In the inside.
What's in the inside, Amaris?
A little fan.
It's a little fan with two powerful magnets. The magnets are away from the fan, so they get closer to the. Yeah. That's called a stir bar. Show the stir bar.
Stir bar. It looks like a little.
So let's see. Turn on the fan. See? And then you can control the speed just a little tad. I need to rewire it. Probably put some better resistors.
And then you close this.
You close it up.
And then it's gonna turn off.
We put the yeast solution.
And then
We put the yeast solution in the Erlenmeyer flask. No, don't hold that. I got it. No. Let go. Put the little bar in there. Because I don't want you dropping it. It's glass. And it's going to attract to that magnet. There it goes.
And watch. And then you get turn it on. And then it's going to be like a little blender.
It's going to be a blender. That's right. So we have to sanitize the Erlenmeyer flask, and we have to sanitize the stir bar because it comes in contact with the yeast.
So the thing you get put in there is going to stay in there for a long time.
It's going to stay in there for a day. So what we're doing is we're going to do a yeast starter which multiplies our yeast cells from 2 billion to about maybe 3.5 billion cells. And that'll be for our bigger batch beer. We're going to do 5.5 gallons of beer. We need more yeast. So instead of buying more yeast, we're going to grow some yeast. That's what this is for. This is called a stir plate, stir bar, Erlenmeyer flask. That's what it is. All right, so before we use or put anything into the Erlenmeyer flask or use the stir bar, we have to sanitize everything. Amaris, what is this called?
Star sand.
Star sand. We need to blend this with some water, put it in a bucket. We can reuse it for brew day tomorrow. So we're going to make 5 gallons of star sand.
I'm going to do it right now.
We're going to do it right now. We're going to use that to sanitize the stir bar, the Erlenmeyer flask, and then tomorrow after the boil, because it's pre-boil, we don't have to worry too much about sanitation. We do want to be clean, but after the boil, that's when we have to be very careful and use the star sand on everything that comes in contact with the beer that has been chilled. So right now we're going to stir up some solution of star sand into a bucket that I have waiting outside. So our bucket is rinsed out. As good as it's gonna get. We have a lid rinsed out. Now we have this star sand solution.
Rinse it out 100 times.
Rinse it 100 times. Why is this not focusing? There you go. So it says we need to do 1 ounce for every 5 gallons of star sand. Right in there. 1 ounce of star sand for 5 gallons. So I'm gonna do 5 gallons in that bucket. So this is how you do it. You get this little thing. My lid broke, so I've been using this thing. And you kind of give it a squeeze, and it goes up. And it's at half. Oh, I'm in millimeters here. That's about half right there. I don't know, the camera can focus. Give it a squeeze. Give it some more squeezing. Give it some more squeezing. I probably should open this.
The lid broke.
Squeezing. One more time. I think that's our 5 gallons, right? Or 1 ounce for 5 gallons right there. That's 1 ounce. Let's see, hopefully I remember to close that spigot. We'll find out. So the star sand's measured. We'll pour that in there.
It looks like syrup.
It looks like syrup because it's yellow, but it's actually kind of like soap, but it's not soap.
It's like soap, but
okay, we're gonna. So we got our star sand in there. We're gonna dilute it with some water. There you go. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do 5 gallons of that. I don't know where 5 gallons is though. That's the problem. So I'll measure this up to 5 gallons and we should be ready to go. So we got a lot of foam in there. The Erlenmeyer Flask is already in there. I'm gonna dump these bad boys in there too. Get them sanitized. So once they're sanitized, then we can go ahead and fill the Erlenmeyer Flask. And then we're gonna inject it with oxygen. You'll see that. Can't forget to sanitize this funnel. As well as the, I'm gonna be using the oxygen stone to oxygenate the DME that I did not have to prepare myself, which is really cool. So how to find that sucker. Let's see here. I think. Yeah, I feel it down there. It's down there. Now I gotta get this guy out, cut it up, and we're gonna pitch that into that solution over there to get our starter started. So we're gonna pitch this. We're gonna pull on those tabs right there. Should come off. Already kneaded this, shook it, mixed it in, made the little slurry nice and homogenized. Should be good to go. Here we go. I'm gonna squeeze the last of that out. Now this here is oxygen, and it's gonna go through this line. It's gonna go through this filter, out into this wand, and the wand has a like point something micron something rather. So it's a stone. It's called an oxygenation stone. It's a bunch of micro holes in it. And when you turn it, it'll release oxygen. I gotta sanitize that too, along with the wand. In the water sanitizer it goes. Gonna leave that in there for a little bit while the stir bar is in there as well. And I forget how to turn this thing on. I think it's lefty loosey. Turn it on a little bit to run the line. Oxygen stones inside, sanitized of course. And then I'm gonna give this a turn. Now we're fishing out the stir bar. There we go. Nice and sanitized. Get the extra suds off. We have it. We got some rotation going. Sooner or later, it should create a little whirlpool. Gonna open this up just a little bit, just like that. Let it capture some air. All right, so this is brew day. The recipe calls for a total of 11.25 pounds of a certain type of grain, 0.75. It's about 12.5 pounds total. So when you mix it into the mash tun, this is called a mash tun. It's a converted Home Depot cooler. When you put it into the mash tun, you can't go with too little water because it'll become dough. So there's a 1.75 quart to pound ratio that we use in home brewing. What'll happen is we put the hot water in here. We raise the temperature of the hot water to a specific amount. In this case, it's going to be 165 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the strike temperature. It all doesn't fit in this one pot, so I have two going. I have a third for sparge, for fly sparging. But right now, we're heating up these two to 165. We put that in there. And then when we dump the grains in, the grains will bring the temperature down to where it's supposed to be based on the calculations. Now the way the mash tun works is that we have this spigot here. It's a stainless steel spigot. It's going to go out either to a pot. In this case, I'll probably be running a pump so I can boil off and recirculate and clean up the grain. What happens is that the grain establishes a grain bed towards the bottom here, and the liquid juices that come out would go out through that filter. It's called the false bottom. So we need to leave it. The reason why we use a cooler is because we need to leave it in the cooler for a minimum of 1 hour so that the starches that are in the grain bag get converted to sugars. So right now those are starches. They're called complex carbs. When the starches become sugars, they're becoming simple carbs. It becomes maltose. And then once the maltose is pooled and the starches are converted to sugars, full conversion has occurred, then we go back to the pot and we boil. We're not there yet. We'll get there. Lots of measuring, lots of thermometer monitoring, and got to be careful. But this is, again, pre-boil. What I mean by pre-boil is that once the wort comes out of here and goes into the pot, after the pot is boiled and it's chilled, then it's dangerous. We have to be very careful not to infect the beer. But right now, beforehand, pre-boil, there's not a whole lot of danger. Okay, so what I have going on here is some extra water. There's a lot of water that's used during the brewing process. We really try to save as much as we can watering the plants, especially when it comes to chilling the wort to a yeast pitching temperature. There's a lot of water wasted. My kettle is clicked. That means I'm going to grab my hot water and I'm going to go ahead and put it into my mash tun. The valve closed. Yes, thank goodness. You'll see all the steam coming out. The reason why I do this is because I want to warm up my mash tun so that when I put my strike water, it doesn't fall down in temperature more than it has to. I'm going to go ahead and leave that in there. I'm going to seal it up. I'm going to warm up some more water. I'm going to keep doing this until my water on the stove reaches temperature. Okay, so you remember my sanitizer. I had to switch out buckets because my bucket last night started leaking. The spigot cracked, I think, and it was leaving a little bit of a puddle in the house, which was a mess. But it was a very small leak, so I was able to transfer most of my sanitizer into this newer bucket. It doesn't have a spigot, so it doesn't have the risk. I'm actually going to be using this one for the first fermentation because it doesn't have a spigot. I'm going to be siphoning out of first fermentation, or primary fermentation, into secondary fermentation. This is my secondary fermentation vessel. Here I have marked my 5.5 gallons because it's not really clearly legible. There are graduations on the bucket itself, but they're really hard to see. But it doesn't have a 5.5, so I did that myself. Oh, the reason why I marked the 5.5 is because my recipe calls that I end up with a 5.5 gallon batch. What happens during the boil process is I lose a lot of liquid through evaporation. So even though the recipe calls for probably 7 or 8 gallons of water in use to be boiled, it'll be boiled down to probably less than 5 or about 5. So I would have to actually add water. And what I do is I just add plain tap water into it, and that's not a problem. It's never been a problem for me. I know people like to put distilled water. Distilled water is missing some properties. I like to just use tap water, and that's done great for me. Not an issue. So this is what I'll be doing. I'll be filling up with the beer once it's chilled into the fermenter. Then I'll fill up with water till I reach the 5.5 gallon. It also helps to chill the wort even more when I use tap water at pipe temperature. And that's good because I'm gonna have to need the temperature to be low enough so I can pitch that yeast over there into this bucket. So here we are. We have grains and water in. It's at temperature 153. Perfect calculation. Thank you very much. Hopefully no leaking. So it's got to be in there for 1 hour. I'm put my timer up for 1 hour. Kitchen timer here. It doesn't matter if it goes a little bit over by the time I get to it. In the meantime, I'll be setting up the pump. I think I went over by a lot. There it goes. 1 hour. All right, so while the mash tun is converting my starches into sugars, which is called maltose or wort, there's a process called sparging where I get to rinse the grains even more. So to do that, I need to do a strike water or sparge water, and the recipe calls for 175 degrees Fahrenheit. So the first one was 165, this is 175. So the mash out or fly sparging is going to occur at 175, and that's why I have this pot here. I'm only going to do 3 gallons of water because I don't have a whole lot of capacity, but usually when I follow a recipe with an additional amount, it's pretty watered down and the wort gets to be pretty clear near the end of the runnings. So right now at about 110, 115, it's raising. I need to maintain it at 175 for when I need to sparge or mash out. Okay, so we got about a minute left, less than a minute. That means that the starch is converted into sugars. We now have what's called a wort, but I'm gonna go ahead and recirculate using this pump. It's gonna go through here. I'm gonna turn it back up to the top and then just go probably for about 10 minutes. That'll help me clear up the wort. When that's done, then I'll go ahead and pump the wort from here to my boil kettle. And while I do that very slowly, very, very slowly, trickle, I'm gonna grab my hot water, which is at well above 175. It's about 200 right now, but by the time I get to it, it should be back down to about 180. And I'm gonna go ahead and put it at the top while again it goes down. That's my alarm. Let's do this. Okay, so I've opened up the lid. It looks like it's good. I'm putting this foil up here. I'm gonna try something because I need to sparge and not make sure that my stream of recycling wort doesn't carve a channel through my grain bed. I don't know, maybe I'll just lay it on top of the grain bed. But I'm gonna punch some holes on it using a thermometer. Okay, so right here we're recirculating. Look at that color. It's supposed to be a red ale, and it looks pretty red. That's pretty good. That's what, 60 lava bond in my grain bill of crystal. So that'll do good to the color. It's got some two-row pale malt, and I got some I think it's a Belgian grain. I don't remember the name of it. But so I'm just gonna be recirculating. That sucker right there is getting hot. The handle got hot, and I was trying to control the flow so it's just a really nice trickle, but it's getting hot. My hand's actually burning a little bit, so it's gonna cool down a little bit while I do this. But you can see that it's actually already kind of cleaning up, which is really nice. So we're establishing a grain bed. We're kind of recirculating it, trying to get the best out of this grain. This will increase the efficiency. Okay, so right now we are draining the mash tun, and at the same time I have my helper helping me sparge in fly sparge some water. So she's going to grab some water and she's going to pour it in really slowly. And just to maintain a certain water level above that grain bed. The foil is my indicator that where the grain bed is. And it's going to come out, again, it's going to go out from here. Been doing this for a little while now, so we have about 2 gallons capacity in this kettle. And I'm going to end up having to use the other kettle to do a split boil. But of course, one kettle is going to be used for the hops, and then we'll combine the 2 later. And then once we chill, then I'll bring it up to level at 5.5 gallons. And that's where we're at. The sugar content seems pretty good. Stick my finger in there. The rule of thumb, that's where it comes from. You stick your thumb in there to check the temperature and check the sugar content. All right, here we have it. These are the spent grains. Disassembled the pump, the lines, everything's out of here. This is the 5-gallon kettle, and it's not to the brim, but it's a good amount, probably about 4.5 gallons in there. And then this is, I think, a 4-gallon kettle. So they're both going at the same time. Once they both start boiling is when I'll start doing my hop schedule. So again, this recipe calls for a series of hops, a variety of hops: Chinook, Columbus, Cascade, in a specific hop schedule. So what I'll be doing is I'll be adding those. The earlier you add it in, the longer it's going to stay in the boil. So if it's a 60-minute hop, for the full 60-minute boil, that means I have to bring it to a boil, add the 60-minute hop, and then it lasts the entire time until I flame out. And then there's a 15-minute, a 5-minute boil. So those get added in later, so they boil less often. The more you boil the hops, and the higher the alpha acids, the more bitter the beer will become. As you approach the tail end of the boil, the hops that are added towards the end are more of an aroma and flavor. But more of the aroma, and as you know, aroma contributes to taste and flavor. So this is what we're doing. Flames are on. This might take a while because it's natural gas and it's a lot of liquid. So unfortunately, I don't make enough beer and of a higher quantity to really be able to transport this to a bunch of cattle. But cows would probably love this stuff. It's still sweet. It's green. They would eat this stuff. But next best thing for a urban community, compost bin. That's my last batch right there. That was a Mocktoberfest. I need to really mix this thing up. But that's where this is going. Gonna mix it all up, and off to the compost it goes. So I'm getting from the next hop edition. I've already added a 60-minute hop edition of Columbus hops. See if I can get that too. There you go. Those are already added. Smells delicious. Now what we do is we buy these hop bags, and the next edition is Chinook hops. They're in pellet form, so it kind of looks like rabbit food. I'll show you in a second. So this one's been opened up. Look what they look like. They're just pellets. We're gonna grab these. We're gonna put it in the bag, the muslin bag, and then we're gonna dump the muslin bag into the boil. And my timer is about to go off for that 20-minute addition. So this one's gonna be in the boil for 20 minutes. You can see my timer's gone off. The Chinook hops. I already have some hops in there from the first edition. I forget which ones they were, but I think they were Columbus. That's what it was. So I'm just dumping those in. And let them go. We'll fish those out later. So these are called Warflock tablets. They're used to clarify the beer. They're added in about 5 or 10 minutes prior to the end of the boil. So I'm gonna throw that in. It's gonna be in there for 10 minutes. As you can see, I also added the, whoa, look at that. I also added the wort chiller, which instead of dumping in the sanitizer, I'm sanitizing with the heat. Because again, it's pre-boil. Once it gets boiled hot enough, it's considered sanitized. The next hop addition is gonna be Cascade, 1 ounces. So we had 1 ounce first of Columbus, then 1 ounce of Chinook, and 1 ounce of Cascade. This is going to be in for 5 minutes, and then we're going to flame out. After flaming out, we're gonna use the wort chiller, chill the beer cool enough so that we can do our yeast. But I'm noticing that I have too much volume, so I might continue to boil off the second kettle, but we should be good. All right, this is our Cascade edition here. Drop it in, steep them up a little bit. Again, this is only going to be in for 5 minutes. Cascade is a very well-known hop, very citrusy, nice aroma. It's good all around for either 60-minute boil, final boil, flame out. It's used for even dry hopping once it's already in the fermenter and it's already been fermented. This hop addition, this variety of hop is very versatile. Very good hop. What I have here is I have attached a conversion from my water hose to this, I guess, plastic hose. It'll go into the wort chiller, and then there's another hose that comes out of the wort chiller. It'll exchange the heat from the kettle, cooling it down very rapidly. Instead of doing an ice bath, the wort chiller is a good investment. The water I'll collect into this bucket that's been leaking on me, but it'll slow it down to a trickle. It might overflow because it's a lot of water that goes through it, but I intend to use it for my landscaping. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, so this is the wort chiller. What's happening is cold water is entering through the copper tubing, and it's going to come out through here. If I don't keep stirring, this is going to cool down. It's cooling down already. You gotta be careful not to introduce anything to this wort anymore because it's starting to get cold. It's getting into that danger zone where if any bacteria falls into it, it can grow. So we gotta be very careful. Once this fills up, I'm gonna go ahead and throw it out there, but I have this pot to do and I have one more pot to do. This is a bigger batch. All right, so after sanitizing the auto siphon, this is what this is right here. You give it a pump and it starts pulling from a higher level, from the kettle in this case, the wort. And it's gonna go into my fermenter. At this point, the wort is cool. It's not hot, it's maybe a little lukewarm still, but by the time it makes it to the fermenter, it should be fine. Now, in this case, again, I have this kettle, and I also have sugars from this kettle. So I'm gonna try to top off. If I go over 5.5 gallons, I think I might be okay with that, but we'll see how this goes. We'll play this out by ear. What I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna oxygenate with this stone the beer, which is now at 5.5 gallons. I'll leave it ajar a little bit so you can see it. I'm gonna put that gently down. I don't want to scratch my fermenter. So let's see if I can get that going. Oxygen. There you go. That's going to dissolve a bunch of oxygen into the beer, which is going to be a perfect environment for the yeast, which is amazing. And this thing is going to go wild. It's a good thing I have this much headroom because it's going to blow up. And I'm going to put a blow-off valve just in case I don't have enough headroom. But for the most part, this should be about 30 seconds to 1 minute. You can see all that foam already going. And I'm running out of oxygen. All right. Wort is oxygenated. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off. Turn that thing off. Remember, this is all sanitized still. Nobody's touched it. I have it all wrapped up. I'm gonna fish this sucker out. I'm gonna get another magnet. There it is. Pulling it up, pulling it up. There's my bad boy. Okay, now I have to remember that I'm gonna go up the side of the graduations because this side is now no longer sanitized. There. So this side is no longer sanitized because I just went up that side. The other side is, and that's the side I'm gonna use to pour right into my concoction of beer. Now Maris wants to be a little nosy. It's all wet over here, Maris, so be careful, baby. There we go. Right in there. And this animal is gonna go crazy tonight. it will go crazy tonight. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to hear it because it's going to be in the other fridge with the temperature controller. I'll show you that in a minute. So here we are in the garage. I got the 5-gallon bucket in the garage, and the fridge is going to be on a temperature controller. Now, I need to explain this here. This is called an airlock. There's supposed to be another little cup, upside down cup in here filled with sanitizer. Some people use alcohol, like vodka or something. And it's basically what happens is gas goes in through the inner tube, and through that little upside down cup and then out. So it's kind of creating like a P-trap. If you plumbers know what that is, it lets the gas go out, but it doesn't let anything go in. Now, like I said, this is probably going to be very volatile because I injected it with oxygen. I did what is it called, a yeast starter. So I anticipate that it's going to be pretty wild and hectic. This is a little tilted, so you can see that it's showing above 5.5 gallons. I did go a little bit over, especially with the yeast starter. Not a problem, but it is tilted, so it's showing that it's more. So what we're gonna do, we're not gonna use this thing. I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do next. All right, so this is what we got going. You see, I took off this cap, put a hose through the inner tube, put the hose in through here, and then I dropped it down into a bottle. And the tube is then submerged into a pool of sanitizer, which won't let anything go back into the beer. So this is a larger blow-off valve than what I had going on. Now, it's time to close up the fridge, set the temperature controller. This is going to be set pretty good, and this is going to be a pretty good brew. All right, what I have here is a Rainbird temperature controller, and what it is the bottom number here is what it needs to be at. So according to my recipe, the preferred temperature is 67 degrees. 68 is not too much warmer, but the optimal shown temperature is 54 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So they want the fermentation to be 67, but I got it at 68. I'm not going to mess with the computer. It's fine where it's at. Plus or minus 5. So 68 plus 5 is going to be 73. 68 minus 5 is going to be 63. So 63 and 73 is within the optimum temperature. So I'm perfectly fine there. The way this works is that if it's too hot, this is the actual temperature inside of the probe that's going on in this wire into the fridge. If it gets too warm, an alarm will sound off. It was just going off like crazy right now because it hadn't been plugged in. It hadn't been in the cool temperature. But as you can see, it's going down, and eventually it'll be hitting the 68. And what happens is that if it's too cold, it'll send a unit saying, if it's too warm, it'll tell the unit to cool and trigger the refrigerator. So the refrigerator is set to the coolest setting, and what happens is when it says cooling, it's sending electricity to the cooling port. I do have an option for heating, but California, we don't really need that. So the fridge is now plugged into that. So when this says cooling, the fridge is plugged in, but the fridge thinks it's cold enough. It's just that the temperature probe hasn't really realized it's cold enough in there. But as you can see, it's going down. And what's going to happen now is we're going to leave that beer in there for 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, it says another 7 days with dry hopping with some, what was that? I think it was Chinook that we're going to dry hop. Other than that, that's pretty much what's going on. This beer should be ready in 3 weeks. That'll send us into probably the beginning of December. I'm planning on kegging this one because I don't have any bottles. Most important thing about brewing is setting up clean and then cleaning up afterwards. Get the sanitizer there. I'm going to save it for keg day. It should last me that long, but got stuff there, got stuff there, tubes everywhere, tools. That thing there needs to be cleaned up. Pump, the table, this guy, the wort chillers outside. I got some hot bags sitting on the ground outside. I have to unscrew the tubes. Lots of stuff to clean up. And you know what they say? Happy life, happy wife, happy life. That's what it is. So here we go. Gotta make sure the wife is happy. Okay, same day. Temperature controller's holding temperature pretty well. I can hear the bubbling from outside. Let's check it out. Look at that. It's going.